Have you ever found yourself, wrestling with the school system, trying to figure out the best way to support your child, especially if they have unique needs? It can honestly feel like you're just lost in a maze of rules and acronyms. Today, we're going to try and cut through some of that complexity. We're taking a deep dive into a really powerful tool that's designed to ensure every student gets, well, a fair shot at education, the Section 504 plan.
That's right.
Huh.
And for this deep dive, we've really dug into a comprehensive guide, Understanding 504 Plans, a parent's guide to education access. We've tried to pull out the most critical insights, distill it down for you, really, to give you the knowledge you need.
Yeah, our mission today is pretty straightforward. We want to unpack what a 504 plan actually is, why it matters so much for you, and how it fits into that bigger picture of educational support. And crucially, we need to clarify how it compares to another key tool, the Individualized Education Program, or IEP. By the end, hopefully, you'll feel not just informed, but, genuinely empowered to advocate effectively.
Right.
So let's start right there. When parents first hear 504 plan, maybe they think special education. Can you break down just fundamentally what is a 504 plan? What's the law behind it?
Okay, so at its core, a 504 plan isn't really about special education in that sort of traditional sense. It's actually about civil rights. It comes from Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973. That's a federal civil rights law. Its main purpose, to make sure students with disabilities have equal access to education. Think of it like leveling the playing field so every child can access and participate in their learning.
Okay, so it's not about giving a child a separate curriculum or different lessons, because I think that's a common misunderstanding.
You've hit on a really crucial point there. No, it's absolutely not about a specialized curriculum. Instead, a 504 plan is basically a set of accommodations, supports, and services. The goal is to provide the necessary adjustments within the general education setting so the student can learn right alongside their peers. Like, imagine building a ramp for a student who uses a wheelchair. They're getting into the same classroom, just, via a different entry point. That's kind of the idea of an accommodation.
Right. That difference between curriculum and access is key. And I think a lot of parents feel that my child just needs a fair shot, not a totally different path. And for you, the listener, that federal backing means it protects your child's right to what's called a free appropriate public education, or FAPE. The school has to provide the necessary support and, importantly, at no extra cost to you. And what's really great is how individual these plans are.
Oh, definitely. They are highly individualized. You won't find two 504 plans that look exactly the same because they have to be tailored to that specific child's needs.
Yeah.
The goal is always to address whatever is stopping them from fully participating and benefiting from their education, making sure they aren't disadvantaged academically or socially because of a disability.
Okay, so it's federal law. Does that mean a 504 plan is identical everywhere in the U.S., or do states have some wiggle room?
That's a really important question. So while Section 504 is federal law, meaning the basic rights and the purpose are the same everywhere, you might find some state-level differences in how it's applied practically. These usually involve things like procedures, specific timelines for evaluations maybe, or how often plans get reviewed. So the fundamental protections are universal, but the, let's say, operational details can vary a bit state to state or even district to district.
Okay, that makes sense. We've laid out what a 504 plan is, its basic purpose. But for many parents, the big question is often, is this the right thing? Or do we need something else? And that brings us to maybe the biggest point of confusion, how a 504 plan is really different from an individualized education program, an IEP. Getting this distinction right is just vital for advocating properly. So let's start by really cementing the 504 side of things, looking at it through this comparison lens.
Excellent point. Okay, so a 504 plan, like we said, focuses only on accommodations. They give concrete examples. Maybe extra time on tests, allowing a student to take breaks, preferential seating near the teacher, or maybe help with note-taking. These are all about supporting a student's access within that general education classroom without changing what they're actually being taught.
And remind us, what's the eligibility criteria for a 504, and what does it specifically not cover?
Right. Eligibility for a 504 is actually quite broad. It's for a student who has a physical or mental impairment that substantially limits one or more major life activities. Now, substantially limits major life activities sounds a bit like legal speak, but it's really expansive. It's not just about physical disabilities you can see. It could be something like, say, severe anxiety that makes just attending school overwhelming, or chronic migraines that really impact concentration, severe allergies needing environmental changes, even ADHD affecting focus. If it genuinely makes it significantly harder for your child to learn or engage effectively day-to-day at school, that could be enough to qualify. But here's the key thing it doesn't include: specialized instruction or changing the curriculum itself. That's the big difference from an IEP. The legal basis, again, is Section 504, and plans are usually reviewed annually with a formal reevaluation maybe every 3 years or so.
That's a very clear picture of the 504 plan, focused on access general classroom. But like you hinted, sometimes just access isn't enough. When do a student's needs point towards something, well, more intensive? Let's pivot now to the IEP and see how it compares.
Okay, the IEP. It operates under a completely different law. The IEEA, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. And the crucial difference here is that an IEP includes both accommodations and specialized instruction. Let's use an example to make it clear. Imagine a student struggles with writing because of, say, a physical disability. Under a 504, an accommodation might be giving them a laptop to type instead of writing by hand. They're still learning the same essay writing skills, the same curriculum, just accessing it differently. But if that same student's disability means they actually can't physically form letters well enough, and they need direct therapy, like OT, to build fine motor skills just to start writing, or maybe they need a modified curriculum focusing on different communication methods, that specialized instruction, that falls under an IEP. It's about changing how they're taught, or sometimes what they're taught, so they can actually make progress.
So an IEP is really for students who need more than just that level playing field. They need specific, tailored teaching and services to actually progress within the curriculum itself.
Precisely. An IEP is designed for students whose disability affects their educational performance and who need special education services to benefit from school. The process for developing an IEP is also much more formal. It involves a whole team: parents, teachers, specialists, maybe a school psychologist, who work together to develop measurable goals for the child. And there are regular reviews, progress monitoring, to track how the student is doing against those specific goals.
So for you listening, why does this distinction really matter? What's the bottom line here?
Well, connecting it back, knowing the difference, is critical to make sure your child gets the right kind of support. Is it about needing adaptations to access the general curriculum? That points towards a 504. Or do they need specialized, individualized instruction to actually learn and make progress? That sounds more like an IEP. Choosing the correct path is just fundamental for a child's success and well-being. It's really about matching the right solution to this specific need.
That clarifies it beautifully. Okay, now let's talk about actually navigating the process, getting eligibility determined, creating the plan, and understanding your rights as a parent. How does this usually kick off?
It often starts with an evaluation.
Mm.
And importantly, your school is legally required to notify you before they evaluate your child for a 504 plan. That's your signal to get involved. You have the right to give consent for that evaluation and also to review your child's rights through the whole process. Remember, eligibility depends on whether there's a physical or mental impairment that substantially restricts a major life activity like learning, concentrating, thinking, communicating. It's broad.
And once eligibility is confirmed, who actually creates the plan? How often is it looked at?
It's meant to be a team effort. The Section 504 team, which might include you as the parent, teachers, maybe an administrator they design, and write down the specific accommodations. These plans are then reviewed at least once a year and reevaluated every few years, or crucially, whenever needed. And this brings up a really key point for parents. You can request a meeting to review the plan at any time if you feel changes are needed. Don't wait for the annual review if something isn't working. Your input is so important. You know your child best. If an accommodation isn't effective, you have the right to speak up and ask for adjustments.
What about discipline? Are there special rules or protections for kids with 504 plans?
Yes, this is a really important area parents need to know about. Students with 504 plans do have additional protections when it comes to discipline. For instance, if the school wants to remove a student for an extended period, typically more than 10 school days total in a year, cumulatively they have to hold what's called a manifestation determination meeting. This meeting is vital. It's designed to figure out if the behavior that led to the discipline was actually caused by or directly related to the child's disability.
Ah, so it's a check. Is this behavior happening because of the disability? That's a huge protection.
It absolutely is. It prevents schools from unfairly punishing a student for behavior that's essentially a symptom of their disability. It asks, was this behavior a manifestation of the disability? If the answer is yes, the disciplinary action might need to be different, and the team needs to look at whether the 504 plan needs changes to address the behavior.
That's incredibly important. A real safeguard against unfair exclusion. But what if, during this whole process, the 504 team decides accommodations just aren't cutting it? What if the child really needs that specialized instruction we talked about?
This is a critical pathway parents absolutely need to be aware of. If the 504 team believes your child needs specialized instruction or related services, things like speech therapy or counseling, that go beyond just accommodations, they must refer your child for an IEP evaluation under IDEA. This should prompt you as a parent to constantly ask, is the current support enough? Is my child making real progress? Or is something more comprehensive like an IEP actually what's needed?
And if there are disagreements, if you feel the school isn't meeting your child's needs under the 504 or isn't following the plan, what recourse do parents have?
Okay, for 504 plans specifically, if you believe your child's rights are being violated, you can usually start with your school district's internal grievance procedures. Many districts have a designated 504 coordinator. If that doesn't work, you have the right to file a complaint with the U.S. Department of Education's Office for Civil Rights, OCR. They're the ones who enforce Section 504. Now, for IEPs, under IDEA, there are even more specific and, frankly, robust dispute resolution options. These include things like mediation, a facilitated discussion to try and reach agreement, and due process hearings, which are more like formal legal proceedings. IDEA also provides stay-put rights.
Stay put. What does that mean?
Stay-put is huge. It means if you and the school disagree about the IEP, say, about services or placement, and you initiate a formal dispute like mediation or due process, your child generally gets to stay put in their current educational placement with their current services while the dispute is being resolved. They can't just change things drastically while you're fighting for what you believe is right. It offers significant protection and peace of mind.
Wow, that's incredibly reassuring for parents in a tough spot. Okay, let's try to tie all these details together with that real-world example you mentioned from Texas. How does that illustrate why these distinctions are so critical?
Absolutely. This Texas example really brings it home. It vividly shows why knowing the difference between a 504 and an IEP isn't just, academic. It has real consequences. The issue was that a large number of students identified with dyslexia were being placed only on 504 plans. Now, the core problem is that dyslexia typically requires very specific, structured, specialized instruction like multisensory reading programs to learn effectively. And 504 plans, as we've established, focus on accommodations. They don't mandate that kind of specialized teaching.
So these kids were getting things like maybe extra time or maybe notes provided, but not the actual core reading instruction they needed to overcome the dyslexia itself.
Exactly right. They were getting access support, but not the intervention required to build foundational reading skills. This meant many students weren't making adequate progress, but after a lot of advocacy from parents and disability rights groups, Texas passed a law. It now requires students with dyslexia who need that specialized instruction to receive full special education plans, IEPs. This ensures they get the targeted help they need. It's a powerful example of why you, as a parent or advocate, must understand these laws. It literally changed outcomes for thousands of kids.
That example really underscores the stakes. It makes it crystal clear. So as we start to wrap up this deep dive, what are the absolute essential takeaways you want our listeners to hold on to?
Okay, 3 main things. First, learn your rights. Understanding the basics of both Section 504 and IDA is your foundation for being an effective advocate. Second, really know the difference. Keep it simple in your head. 504 is primarily about access through accommodations. IEP involves specialized instruction and related services. Third, stay involved. Be present. Go to the meetings, read the documents carefully, ask questions, and don't ever hesitate to request changes if something isn't working. Your participation is absolutely key.
And a final crucial point.
Yes, push for the right support. If you genuinely feel that accommodations alone under a 504 aren't enough for your child to make meaningful progress, trust your gut. Ask for that IDEA evaluation for an IEP. That referral could open the door to the specialized help your child might truly need to succeed.
We've covered a lot today, unpacking the details of 504 plans, their civil rights roots, how they differ from IEPs, all aimed at helping ensure students with disabilities get the support they need to thrive. Knowledge really is power when you're trying to navigate these often complex school systems for your child.
Absolutely. And maybe just a final thought for you, listener, to chew on. Think about that major life activities definition for 504 eligibility. It's broad. So how might a condition that seems common, maybe severe allergies causing frequent absences or reactions, or chronic migraines that make concentration almost impossible some days, how might that substantially limit a child's ability to learn or participate fully in school? And what kind of creative, tailored accommodations, maybe simple things like air purifiers, adjusted lighting, or flexible deadlines, could make a world of difference for that specific child to truly access their education? What stands out to you about the power of just knowing these options are out there?